Oh, I thought we were doing the clock thing.
Oh, no clock.
No clock.
No
Okay.
clock today.
Hi, everybody. We are live on Facebook. We have had a countdown timer, and we are not using a countdown timer today, so there's a little bit of confusion. So you get to see the edits before they come out, and they're not going to come out because it's live. And this is the Adventure Effect Live with Tom and Curtis. And today we have a special guest with us, Dorothy Liu. She's a friend of ours who has played a special role in the evolution of our business, because when we were just playing with this idea of adventure as a gateway to the soul, Dorothy came into our life and spent a very concentrated and focused, powerful conversation with us, helping ask the hard questions that led to the evolution of who we've become today. And she really supported us and held us in our vision in a way that was powerful and nurturing. And today we're going to talk with her about what adventure means to her. And when we've talked about what adventure means to her, we're going to move on to a space that we like to play in, which is adventure, spirituality, and business, and where those 3 points converge and the global transformation that is possible inside of that space. And once we have finished with that, Dorothy is going to, a little bit against her will, share with us about her upcoming book that she is working on. It is not going to be released anytime soon, but it is a bun in the oven. And so in this conversation, we're hoping that we can help her in the same way that she's helped us, and bring that one step closer to reality just by speaking it out into the world on Facebook Live. Dorothy, it's a
Hi,
pleasure to have you here.
I'm honored to be invited.
Aw.
And I got kind of teary, when we were talking about our little tete-a-tete a few weeks ago.
It was a good tete-a-tete. A lot has happened.
I loved that conversation. I loved hearing where you guys come from, like from here, which was awesome.
And you shared so much with us. And adventure has been such a part of not just your life, but your family's life, your husband, your daughter.
Yeah, we have kind of a crazy story.
You do. And so we just had to have you on to share your story. And your life has been an adventure.
Yeah, I probably never would have characterized it that way, which is probably the great irony. And full disclosure, I did get my family's permission last night to talk about some of the things that we went through if it came up. So where do you want to start?
Well, let's start with adventure. What does adventure mean to you?
I was writing some stuff down, and the first thing I wrote was adventure is something that other people do. Which I have no idea why I wrote that down. But I think that there's a part of me that sort of believes that, or I think that about other people, that all these other people are doing far more interesting things than I am. And so I'm always a little bit surprised when people see me as an adventurous person. And I mean, that's all I got. I don't know why that is. But I think I think underlying that is just sort of this, probably a lifetime curiosity about stuff. Like I used to tell people that I'd read the back of a milk carton just to see what information was there.
I can resonate with that.
I know. I feel like you. So I'll say that my fatal flaw is that I'm not a depth person. I'm sort of I wouldn't go so far as saying I'm a dilettante, but I'm sort of a jack of all trades, master of none. But when I feel like I hit a level of competency, I'm out.
And yet, in the conversation that we had with you, you explored some deeply profound things with us philosophically.
For you guys, you mean like the things that we talked about for you, or just in life in general?
Yeah, just in general, and in what you revealed to us about yourself, that that maybe in the physical world you hit like a level of core competency and move on, but there is a vertical in which you are always going deeper, it feels.
Yeah, I think that's probably true. I mean, I'm always really curious about people and what makes them tick,
Mm-hmm.
what's important to them, how to connect with that.
Mm-hmm.
I think that if I look across, all of my jobs, whether, if I look across my career, whether it was working in tech inside or as a consultant and advisor or as a coach, I'm always looking for that one point of connection. So if I look at marketing, right,
Mm-hmm.
like for me, it's all about, okay, what is that note of resonance that people will just kind of like, oh, that's me, I need that. I think what has evolved over time for me personally is that I spent so much time, so many years trying to make something applicable to anyone who might be interested. And I think now I'm much more, I'm not right for everybody.
Mm.
And that is a huge shift.
Something that just jumped out at me when you were saying that, talking about being a jack of all trades. Something that I've learned to realize about myself in the last few years is I felt like I've been going sideways a lot of the time in my life, from one career to another, one relationship to another. But actually what's been happening is I have been going sideways, but I have also been going down. I've been going kind of diagonally down, almost like a set of stairs. And it seems like a chaotic path, but it's all funneling down to a deeper connection with myself, a deeper connection with my purpose and my being.
Are you saying that it's like a spiral staircase, and as you go, the staircase gets tighter?
Sure.
You know what I visualize?
Like always a down.
You know what I visualize? Okay, so this might be a reach, but so well, I'm sure Tom has skied Whistler. I don't know if Curtis has. All right, so on the backside, there's that bowl. You have to take the T-bar, and then you have to kind of hike up a little bit, and you kind of like ant trail. I can't remember what it's called. And I do this with some of my own clients where I describe my peak experience and ask them to do the same, because it's really where you are at flow, right? And so when you described what you're doing, all I could picture was that day. It was like a bluebird day, and I was sort of like, my friends were scattered all over the bowl, and I just had this like perfect easy run where I could see my shadow because the sun was behind my back and my upper body was quiet. And I was just working my way, not straight down the bowl, but actually at a zigzag. So I could ski as much of it as I could by just going up and then down, up and then down, and then eventually hitting, the cat track back, which is like the longest cat track ever. I think it's like 3 kilometers or something. It's misery. It's misery on a snowboard too. But I think that's what I visualize like with you. And I think for me, like I'm always moving forward, but it doesn't feel like it's always the straight shot. And sometimes I don't even have a plan, or I'm actually like, oh, it looks like I had a plan.
And that is the mark of someone who is living in an adventure.
You think?
That is the mark of someone who is navigating the unknown.
I would feel like my life is just like this crazy happy accident.
And that's
all kind of worked out,
And that's flow, right? It's a crazy happy accident. It just happened. How did it happen? Well, you followed impulses, you followed your bliss, but that's a sign of being in the unknown.
Yeah, I think that, but I always wonder, can you make somebody adventurous? Is it learned, or is it nature or nurture?
Well, think about you've seen The Lord of the Rings.
Yeah.
So Frodo didn't start out adventurous, right? He was a hobbit living in the Shire. They had their second breakfast. They had their routine, right? And hobbits we're known as people who don't go on adventures,
Mhm.
right? And those are my people. That's where I come from. So I very much relate to that background. And then Gandalf shows up, and in the hero's journey, there's the call to adventure, right? Which is very much signified by Gandalf showing up in the Shire
Mhm.
and saying, "Hey, Frodo, like, let's go." And he's like, "Whoa, whoa, 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 whoa! I'm a hobbit. I don't do this."
Mhm.
And then all of a sudden, he's sprinting after Gandalf because he doesn't want to miss the train,
Yeah.
right? And so, can someone become adventurous? That depends if someone answers the call. I think that we are all given the call to adventure throughout our lives. The question is who is ready to respond to that call.
It's interesting. All right, so now you've got me thinking, because I'm actually terrible at Lord of the Rings analogies, but I always loved Sam.
Mm,
And this was probably did we talk about Alex Honnold the next, I'm sure we did at some
I'm
point.
sure we did.
So one of the perspectives I try to weave into my mindset is asking the question, like, what conditions do you need to take acceptable risk?
Mm-hmm.
Mm,
And so in the extreme case, you've got Alice Honnold, who will like practice a route and map it out for 4 years, but by the time he actually gets on the, he knows every move he's going to make.
yeah.
3 miles, right? So was there really any risk?
Which is that's an extraordinary example where he says unequivocally that wasn't an adventure for him because the outcome was certain.
Right. It's as certain as he could ever make it, right? Because he created the conditions of.
But even then, for anyone who doesn't know, we're talking about Alex Honnold, who free soloed El Capitan 3,000 foot rock face with no ropes. But he went out the first time, or several times he went out, he climbed up half the wall and he was like, nope.
Not my day.
It's not my day. And so he made a judgment call to come back because on that day, he felt that the risk was too high, that he wasn't connected somehow. But then when he came out and he actually did it, he was certain in his mind that there was no risk.
And I just found, I think there's an interview with him and Anderson Cooper on CNN, and Anderson Cooper says, "Oh yeah, I think I'm pretty adventurous, and I'm a risk taker, but you're a real risk taker." And that's when Honnold said, "Well, I'm really not. I take little risk, incremental risks until they stack up into a big achievement." Mm-hmm. And I think that would have caught people by surprise. So back to Sam. What I found really interesting about Sam, and it's been 10 or more years since I've seen the film, and longer than that for reading the book, was that Sam was really about goodness, and that he was very clear and attached to his values, right? So he sort of had this baseline of who he was and what he believed about the world that actually freed him to just go along. And I thought that was actually like that, he became the most powerful character for me because of that. Sort of his inherent goodness, his surety of self that enabled him to be for other people.
Mm. And I think that what you've isolated there in Sam, I think that maps very well onto the project that you've undertaken that you shared in the group where we met.
Oh, oh, you can't fail an eye exam. Yeah, I think that speaks to all of my Enneagram 1-ish perfectionist tendencies.
Yeah.
So what was that?
Do you happen to have the book cover handy?
Yeah, I do.
You do?
I do. Let me look. Let's see. It's in my pile here.
So we met Dorothy on a coaching adventure. We'll give you a second to explain that.
Okay.
We met her in a group of coaches, and she got challenged by the head coach, the host of the group, to draw a cover for her book because it was the center of a conversation that they had while we were in session. And so Dorothy went on to produce this just amazing book cover, which she's about to share with you right now.
Well, I think that what happened was, so when I was going through training, my coach at the time, a guy named David Taylor Klaus, we had talked about a lot.
I just had a call with DTK this morning.
Yeah, I know you guys know as DTK, and I knew him as David Klaus because we've actually been friends for a very long time, since college, for a very long time. I think that when I sort of start, I feel like it's important to have context around this because it goes to probably the idea around adventure, the choices I've made along the way, about my life, and then also the values and the conversations I've had with my daughter, who is now 17. So my parents are American or immigrants. They actually immigrated from Australia, or they immigrated from Asia, from China and Taiwan, by way of Australia in 1964. And I was their little surprise a year later. And growing up in America as a Chinese American in the 60s and 70s is very different from now in a lot of ways, but also very much the same. And I always found it was really interesting that no matter who we are, or how we're raised, or whether we're artistic or scientific, it's like the Asian American experience seemed really consistent. And I had, relatively liberal parents. Like, I did not have to be a doctor or an engineer or a scientist. So I felt like I had pretty, we were kind of the wild kids. None of my sister, none of us are the traditional Chinese vocations. But along the way, I realized that no matter what, I still had the same sort of pressures. And it was actually kind of sad for me that despite wanting to break the cycle for my daughter, she started to have a lot of those same pressures too. And I couldn't figure out where they were coming from, but I was like, we cannot be the only ones who feel this way. So it started out with that context, but it really came to life when I sat in the doctor's office one day, and they go through the whole, the eye chart, and I get to like the fourth one, I get them all right. They're a little fuzzy, but I get them all right. And then I get to the next one, and it's a little bit fuzzier. And then, by then, like I can only get half of them, but a G and an O and a Q, they all sort of look the same. So, not my fault. But then when I get to the last, near the last line, I blow it. Like, I don't get any of them right. And I'm like, and I turn to my doctor, I'm like, can I have another chance? Because I know if you give me at least one or two more chances, I can get all the letters. I can get them all right. And then he just like looked at me really weirdly. And then, because he's like, sure. And, I still didn't get them right. And it was, it was really, really devastating. But he's like, all right, well, can we just figure out what it is? And, then they do the better one, better two, better three, they're flipping the lenses and get me the right prescription. And all of a sudden it dawns on me through this whole exam that I'm like, me getting all of those right in the last line really doesn't help you, does it? He's like, yeah, and it doesn't really help you either. And I really had to think about that. Like, when you've sort of been conditioned to try to get a perfect score in everything, sometimes the perfect score actually doesn't help you. So that was sort of the beginning of the book idea, because David had said, well, if you were to write a book, what would it be called? And I said, oh, Confessions of a Failed Tiger Mom, because it's okay to fail a test, even a class, maybe a few classes. But what happened with our coaching experience, that where we met, was that the mentor leader asked told me that by the next day I had to come up with 6 more chapter titles. And I'd been sitting on this idea for 2 years. And I mean, quite frankly, I'm still sitting on it because I haven't started writing yet. But I think that it was a good, so I came up with not just 6, but I came up with all 9 chapters. I have all my prompts. And it was amazing to me that you could just have one encounter for 5 minutes that can really like just kick the door open. Like, that's really amazing. And I think that like when we talk, pardon me?
Chapters ended up being you can't fail an eye test, right?
Well, the first chapter I already had, which was you can't fail an eye exam. A couple of the other ones were an Asian F is still an A. So if you ever watch, yeah, I don't know if everybody knows what that means, but there's an whole episode of Glee where Mike Chang gets an A minus, and he's like, "That's like an Asian F." I'm like, "Well, it's still an A minus." And what else did I have? Oh, I had one called "You Don't Have to Play the Violin." I didn't play the violin, but you know, there are just a lot of sort of stereotypes about us Chinese kids that sort of defined us, like, and defined the choices. And I, you know, I'm in these discussion groups with younger Asian American, like kind of, I call them rising Asian American leaders. And it's the same conversation all over again. And I feel this really deep calling to help them break that cycle. I mean, there are so many ways for us to honor who we are, but also be who we are.
So what's your intention for the book?
Well, as you know, I have a pretty dry sense of humor. I think that it's an attempt to sort of laugh at ourselves and these sort of crazy values that we seem to adhere to that don't really matter. Or I shouldn't say that. They matter, but they don't have to define us, right? We don't have to be perfect. It's okay to stay home and watch cartoons on Saturday morning and not go to Chinese school. Your life isn't over if you don't get an A.
So now I'm curious, what's possible in this adventure of life when you're able to release yourself from those shackles? If that's the right way to put it.
I think everything, right? Everything's possible. You know, I pretty much followed I'd say that, you know, despite having parents who really didn't put those pressures on me, I still kind of followed the playbook. You know, I went to 2 Ivy League schools. I worked for some of the, you know, best known names in tech. And, you know, I did pretty, you know, I did well. I mean, I did well. But then, you know, one day I was sitting so I worked for Microsoft, and I mean, the time that I was there, I loved it because I felt like we were doing something important, and we were changing people's lives. Like, you think about like the fact that, you know, we're doing this on a personal computer is an incredible thing.
It is incredible.
Right? It's incredible. And like my first job out of college is working for a company called Silicon Graphics that at the time in the 1980s did real-time 3D graphics. You can do that on a PC now, right? Like those guys who do all those movie effects in 3D, that was done on a $250,000 workstation in the 80s that was only really available to the military. And now you can do this on a Mac. That's nuts. So I always loved that. But toward the end of my time at Microsoft, I remember I went to a company meeting where they have, you know, like all the employees in a baseball stadium, and it was the first day for like 160 employees, and they got to sit front and center, and they were stoked, like they were so excited to be there. And I just sat there and said, you know, I should feel that way. I should feel that way if I'm going somewhere every day. and working 40, 50, 60, 70 hours a week. You know, if I'm going to spend that much, I should feel the way they do. And that's when I knew I was done. But I didn't know what I was going to do. So I did a super scary thing and I pulled the trigger and I left. And all I did, I saved some money. I actually planned it out a little bit. It's not like I just woke up one morning and quit, but I literally stripped everything off my list. And if I did one productive thing a day, it was a good day. And I think by doing that, I mean, that was when I literally spent the next 5 years doing everything opposite from what I was expected to do. So that was when I decided I was going to become a mom and started the process to adopt my daughter as a solo parent. And then on my bucket, I had a bucket list during my, we call it a paper pregnancy while you're waiting, because because you're not actually pregnant, but it's all the anticipation. It's about 9 months.
So you're definitely in the process of becoming a mom.
Yeah, you just get to drink martinis and like do crazy stuff, while you're waiting. So one of the things I decided to do was go to Peru and hike the Inca Trail. And so you're like hiking with these people and there's not a lot to do, because you're in the middle of nowhere. And so we just told everybody, we told each other our stories, and everybody knew that I was planning to adopt and my life was going to be very different in a year. And on that trip was the guy I eventually married.
So how you're not an adventurous person.
I know. I mean, it's like when I tell these stories, I'm like, oh yeah, but I don't ever feel, I think that I don't know why. That's what I said. I don't know why I wrote that down.
So I can't remember if I've asked you this or not. Are you a person who, I don't know if I can even ask this on Facebook Live. Are you a plant medicine person?
A what?
A plant medicine person.
What's that mean?
Okay, so the first time I smoked weed.
Oh, you mean am I a stoner?
No, have you used psychedelics for the purpose of personal transformation?
No,
so
I never have.
I have a few friends where the first time I've been with them for their first times, and they smoke weed or they do some acid or whatever, and they're like, I didn't really get that high, and then they tell me this thing that they do that they never do when anyone else is around or whatever.
Okay. But something lifted from there.
Yeah, and so I think of this when I ask people questions, it's like I don't really get high but effect. And so it's like, I'm not really an adventurous person, but I went and hiked the Inca Trail and I adopted and I did this and I did this and I did this. Or
yeah, I just, it's not totally untrue. I mean, it's not totally true that I never indulged in things. I can't really, I guess, it's arguable whether I can run for president, right? So, but since it's not happening, I'm not going to worry about that. But it was, but that, I mean, I think that pretty much stopped around college. So it's been a long time. I think that, I think the thing that is, I was thinking about this the other day. I still say this sometimes, I like being the dumbest person in the room, even though I know that I'm not dumb. So I've always just sought out people who were going to just basically elevate my baseline, whatever that is. And I think that that's probably true with the people I do of my friends, I am the least adventurous, but they're, they're mountain biking, they're jumping out of planes, they're bungee jumping, but I'm not in that. So if I do a fraction of what they're doing, I guess I'm pretty adventurous. But
when I put a post up this weekend about the snowshoe adventure that I'd been on, and the learning or the insight that I got from that adventure, your comment on that post was, as soon as the borders open, I'm coming to find you guys. And I can't remember if you stated it explicitly, but
I said I was
we're going on an adventure together.
Yeah, but I don't know that I would do all I think that I would do things with you, but I probably wouldn't do everything you do. I'm not even like, I'll do it. Like I'll do a zip line. I won't jump out of a plane.
But the key to an adventure, Dorothy, is that the the environment is uncontrolled and the
Yeah,
outcome is unknown,
that's true.
right?
I agree with you with that.
And so people always want to make things a matter of scale.
Yeah,
I'm not this because,
yeah.
but adventure is hardwired into your DNA.
I think that I mean I agree with you. I think that it's, I don't know if it's a function of self-deprecation or, lifelong
The
imposter
Asian,
syndrome. Is a lot, lifelong imposter syndrome. I don't know.
it's the Asian F,
Maybe.
right?
I mean, like, I think that I'm good at a lot of things. I don't think I'm exceptional. Like, I don't think of myself as, I'm not a subject matter expert on anything, but
But
I know enough to be dangerous in a lot of things.
my point was that you grew up in a world where if you brought home an A minus, it wasn't good enough. And I see that reflected.
Your mother's gonna hear that and she's gonna say, I never said that.
But it's part of the culture.
Yes, it is a cultural thing.
So Mama
Yeah.
Lou, this is a cultural thing, just to like.
Yeah, and it's true.
But,
It's true.
but so you have this like cultural relationship to perfection, and you see all of these people who are like A plus in the adventure sphere, and you're looking at yourself as an A minus, which makes you feel like you're an F.
I don't know it's so much that. I think that what it is, like, I'm okay with being the bottom of the top. Does that make sense? Like, I don't like, I'll contrast that with my husband who like he took the CrossFit, whatever, the CrossFit certification or training exam. And like, okay, so he and I took it, within a couple of months of each other. His way is like, as soon as he came home after taking the test, he looked up the answer to one question that he wasn't sure about when he took the test. He's like, got it. I'm like, oh my God, you just think about this in terms of like minimizing the number of answers you get wrong. He's like, oh yeah, he's like 100 or die. If there's an extra credit point to get, he's there. He's also not Asian. I, on the other hand, were like, oh yeah, like for me, it's very binary. Pass, not pass. I don't care. I'm like, I'm very happy if I do well, but pass, not pass. I'm good. And I think I'm that way, sort of with, it's if the only way I excel is if I'm in a pool of exceptional people and I'm okay being the weakest of the strong.
And on that note, I would love for you flashed your book cover briefly.
Okay.
Come back to that. Just if you could hold it up to the screen and just.
Oh, you want to go a little bit tighter?
Yeah, let's get a little tighter.
I found out I probably had to change the title.
What does Confessions of a Failed Tiger Mother mean to you, and what could it mean to the audience?
So there was a book a few years ago called, I think, Battle Hymn of the Tiger Mother. I think it's by a very brilliant woman named Amy Chua, and her kids have done exceptionally well by any standard. But I was reading all this, and I said, that's so unfair, right? It's so unfair to put that pressure on anyone, whether you're, Asian or not. And what if it were possible to not do any of those tiger mom things? And what would happen? And, I only have one kid, so I'm sort of one and done. So if I did it, if I had this like failed tiger mom mindset in how I parented and my kid fails for whatever reason, I guess my experiment didn't work. So for me, it's just that there isn't a playbook. There's your playbook. And, I guess, the way we tried, not always successfully, the philosophy we had was whoever my kid is that day is the kid that she is that day. And we tried very hard to respect who she is as an independent person, even if she was little. Even when she was little, that finding what she believed was really about her asking questions to figure out what made sense to her. I could say, 17 years later, 16, 17 years later, we've had ultimately great success, but it was not always appreciated, and we did not get it right a lot of the time. And learning to have, finding out that there were other ways to parent, and to have humility in the mistakes that we've made, and to receive the feedback from our child on what isn't working or is working, was a huge part of us evolving as a family, and it was painful, it was painful at times. And I think that there is, especially now there with the pandemic, it's like there's so much urge to make it not suck for our kids, so they don't have to suffer, they don't have to, and I don't know what the answer is to that, and I don't know that the way we did it was any better or more correct than anyone else's way. But I think that when I started kind of crafting this set of titles or prompts, is that it's okay to not expect your kids to do the most and the best all the time. It's just, you think about like being a performance athlete. You cannot perform at that level on a sustained basis. You train and you develop for that moment where you need to show up, whenever that moment is.
And even in the context of the event that we met at, it was spread out over 9 days, and it was billed as a 9-day event. And on the Sunday, which was kind of halfway smack in the middle of the event, there was nothing planned.
Yeah.
And it was a rest day. And his point was that rest day is training day. We can't go at this intensity for 9 days straight. You need a day off.
Yeah. I think that, like I remember, in college, I ran track for a very short while. And I remember, remember thinking back on that time, I was sick a lot. And I think that we certainly didn't know what we know now about training and diets, for the regular athlete. But I think that part of the reason I was sick all the time was that I really just didn't know how to tune, like you're just at this very fine line of, performing or failing. And I don't think it's, for the regular person, it's just not a way to live, or, or you could die, or, and I think that it also sets us up, one of the things I was thinking about before we got together is, when I was 28, I had a stroke, which is, very young, and still don't know why. It just happened. Never happened again. But that was, I was 28. I had graduated from Yale Management School the year before. I'd climbed to the top of Half Dome. That was like my first like real like hard adventure, really challenging physical adventure. I had a great job. Everything was right. I was probably in the best shape of my life, and still this thing happened. And, because we didn't know what caused it, I didn't know if I was going to be, I didn't know. Well, I had memory issues, and I had expressive aphasia. So I couldn't talk, and I couldn't remember a thing. If you said something to me, I forgot it within 20 seconds. What if that was the way I was going to be for the rest of my life? And And I think that, the irony of that is that I was doing everything right. Like everything was right. And still this thing happened.
Mm.
So I think that if you are living your life for that moment sometime where, all of this like incredible high performance stuff um, is supposed to pay off in some magical way, you've lost exactly what you were supposed to do in that moment. Does that make sense? Am I making sense? Like it's all this preparation and excellence for someday isn't really going to serve you if you didn't actually like enjoy what was happening in the moment, watching the cartoon.
Quote comes to mind. I can't remember who it's by. Maybe one of you can remember it, but how man sacrifices his health for wealth, so that he can sacrifice his wealth for health.
Yeah. It's like what we say about younger people. It's like you're either healthy and poor or rich and half dead. You can't enjoy the money that you have.
It speaks really deeply to, we did an event around the concept of adventure as a gateway to the soul. And on that event, it came out that there are two kinds of goals. There are process goals and there are destination goals. I think that's what it was, right? Sound about right?
So kind of like the journey versus the end.
Yeah.
Versus the destination. Yeah. Okay.
And what you're talking about there is destination goals, where it's like, I'm going here and it's just about like this moment, and I feel the not having of that moment.
Right.
I feel like the not being of that. Whereas a process goal is the like, I am becoming this and I'm enjoying the process of becoming that.
Feeling it, right? Like
feeling it, exactly.
Allowing yourself to feel it. You remember that story I told you guys the other day about how Mike and my daughter and my husband got lost on the trail?
Tell it again.
So my days of doing crazy hikes are kind of over. My husband he goes on long hikes all the time, most of the time solo. My daughter has now rediscovered hiking, and she was supposed to go with her best friend, but didn't want to get up that early. And I said, well, why don't you go talk to your dad? I think he's got something long planned on Sunday. And it was like 21 miles, but he was going to run it. He was going to like trail run it. I said, well, you can ask him, but I think he has a plan. And I thought for sure he was going to say, well, I'm getting up at 5:30 and I'm running it, so you can come, but that's what we're doing. But she's like, I'll go. I'm like, okay, 21 miles, down by Mount Rainier or something. I can't remember where they went. And so around 2:00, I get a text, and he's like, I think we're going to be a little bit longer. I'm like, how much longer? He's like, well, we were supposed to turn around at like mile 11, and I didn't see the sign. I'm like, where are you now? And he's like, maybe around mile 15. And I'm like, okay, that's a long hike. So, I mean, what are you guys gonna do? Because you don't have the gear to, I mean, they usually have, they have emergency stuff with them, but still. Like, well, we're gonna hike out because it might not be till like 8:00. He's like, but I have a signal, so I'm calling you now, and if you don't hear me from me like in the next 6 hours, it's because there's no signal. So I'm at home, like, just like, oh, like, he's gonna kill my baby. But they made it out. They got out just before dark, and I think that what was, they've banged heads a bit, just like any a teenage daughter and a protective dad. But that experience brought them closer. It was, they're closer. Maybe he said that she didn't cry, she never wavered. She actually didn't even start complaining until they were about 2 miles from the from the parking lot. And I think that, for my daughter, she's like, they were sitting there and he's like, you did that. It's like, you did 31 miles, maybe 30. He's like, you did that. Your body did that. Your mind was strong enough to get you out and do that. And she's like, yeah, fuck yeah. She's, and, so it goes back to like, okay, so what happens when, you do everything right and really something really bad happens, even though you did everything right? Their relationship is, as I would say, a playful version of what they were before. But I think that there's this much deeper trust. Maybe he still pisses her off and she still frustrates him, but there is a deeper trust. Right? There's a trust in your ability. There's a trust.
What's coming through for me there is that we have these roadblocks, these obstacles that present themselves in our lives.
Mm-hmm.
But often, and I'm just thinking about the post that I wrote this morning about worry versus feeling.
Mm-hmm.
Worry so much about something going wrong.
Yeah.
We worry about the whatever, if someone's going to get lost, or if the business is going to fail, or go, and we're in this like spiraling vortex of doom. And but often these obstacles, these turning points where the shit hits the fan and things go completely wrong, where you suddenly realize you're at mile 15 instead of mile 11 and you don't know if you're going to get out before dark.
Right.
Those experiences, when we look back on them, are the experiences that created us. They're the experiences that gave us the most.
Absolutely. There was so I'll bring it back to DTK. So he had this, he came out with a book he actually did come out with a book last year. And one of the quotes are like, I can't remember the exact quote, but it's from an author, Richard Bach, who had written Jonathan Livingston Seagull and Illusions. And it was something like, something to the effect where you can only work with what you know, not what you fear. Right. And that's worry versus, and then from there, so David does these series of little talks and every week and about mindset, and he had thrown up this word on the screen that was my word for 2019. I pick a word every year, and the word was pronoia.
Oh, I know this.
Do you know this?
I know this. Yeah, there's a book by that title. I was thinking about purchasing it at one point in my life and didn't, but it exists. It's a thing.
It's a thing. So if paranoia is the belief that the universe is conspiring against you, pronoia is the belief that the universe is conspiring in your favor.
Well, I subscribe to that.
It's powerful, right? I mean,
we have a saying, a phrase, whatever you want to call it, a mantra, that everything's always working out for us. And more often than not, it's true.
It is true.
And if our mantra was, life is hard, everything's going against us, the universe hates us, that would be true. Because, this Michael Neal talks about this all the time, how we think we're experiencing reality, but we are actually experiencing our thinking. And this idea of reality as this thing that is real, that is true, that is concrete, that is factually accurate, is just nonsensical.
Yeah.
Because I can look at the same wall one day to the next and see a different color. I can listen to you tell a story and I hear one thing and Curtis hears something completely different.
Yeah.
We experience our thinking. We had
an interesting conversation with one of the discussion groups I'm in, where we sort of tried to figure out the distinctions between truth, fact, and trust, and how each one sort of creates it's like fact is fact, truth is based on how much you trust either the source or the conditions.
But fact also is only fact if you if you trust and believe in the truth.
Yeah, maybe. I don't know. You know, it's like all these people are like, oh,
My facts can be different to your facts, right?
or they could just be incomplete.
Or they could be incomplete. Yeah, that sounds like a very fun and interesting and never complex conversation.
Well, it was a few people on the spectrum of political beliefs. So it was, but it was, you know, it was. I think that it reveals that what people want for society is not that different from person to person, but how we get
No,
there.
on a core level,
Hmm.
we all desire to feel very similar things: freedom, belonging,
Yeah,
safety, trust, security, adventure,
love.
consistency, inconsistency, love. Yeah.
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 Um. So yeah, so it's, you know, it's you know, I think that, you know, for all the things that the three of us have talked about over the last couple of months as we've got to know each other, I think that it's a lot of it is just not just cutting other people a break, but cutting yourself a break, right?
Yes.
And it is about, you know, who you are that day. Well, who you are that day does not define who you are, and it doesn't need to define who you are the next day.
I've
But it
been
is hard to live that.
I've been having a conversation with myself recently about momentum
Mm.
and the stories that we tell
Hmm.
about ourselves.
Hmm.
And so the story I've been telling people a lot about myself, my physical body, is that I'm in the worst shape of my life. I'm, I'm like chubbier than I've ever been. And people are like, oh, you're great, you're great, you're great, you look great, you're doing well, you look so young, you're like, and it's all true, right? But the story that I've been telling about myself has kept me stuck in that place. And in the meantime, for the last 3 or 4 months, I've found a training partner. We're training together twice a week at my house. I'm working with a movement specialist. I'm working with a personal trainer. I'm just having a conversation to hire on a
You have more people on
nutritionist.
your team than Federer.
Yeah, and so, but I never tell that story to people.
All
Right?
the things that you're doing.
I don't tell them all the things that I'm doing. I just tell them this story about like, oh, I'm really out of shape. Like I'm carrying all this extra weight. And it's, if I'm honest, it's not that much. It's just I'm used to being in much trimmer and
Yeah.
much fitter than I am
I
today.
always tell people I like my lifetime for any given sport is about 7 years. Like I'll do it like really hardcore for
Yeah.
7 years and then I'm on to the next.
Right.
And I always say that I am a former competitive athlete trapped in a fat person's body.
Mm-hmm.
You know how they always say like people who like lose like hundreds of pounds, or, you know, these extreme, like, oh, but she still thinks like a fat person. She's like a fat person inside and trapped in a. And I'm like, well, I am the opposite, because I still have not
this is going
accepted that I'm like not, you know, this really lean athletic person.
So the point where I was about to go is that why don't I tell the story of what I'm creating? Why don't I tell the story of, when people ask how I'm doing, why do I lead with this instead of that? And I recently had a training injury where I couldn't train for 2 weeks on the weights. And so I kept going to see all of my people and meeting my training partner and just asking my movement specialist and my personal trainer to help me solve this problem of why I keep getting re-injured on this same weight, doing the same exercise over and over again. And they said, well, stop using kettlebells. Obviously it's bad for you. And I'm a little bit stubborn in some regard.
Oh yeah, I would like, but I have to master it.
Exactly. And so I said, well, come up with a solution. Like, let's solve the problem. I've invested so much time in this, and this is the modality that I love. This is what I've picked. So let's make it work. And right at the end of the 2 weeks, both of them came up with a piece. And those two pieces together, I believe, have solved the problem. And during an injury cycle, I get really down on myself. I beat myself up. and I'm going backwards, I'm doing this, I'm doing that, like I'm a loser, I'm why did I do this to myself? Why does this keep happening to me? I'm never going to reach the level I want. Like my whole world just goes into a tailspin. And this time it didn't. I was able to see that I was creating momentum.
Yeah.
Right. And so often in life, not just with this injury, but so often in life, we go through like a complete disassembly of a belief system or an identity, and we feel like we're going backwards, or we have a goal and we're not doing anything every single day for months towards that goal. And we feel like we're going backwards because we feel like if we had done something every day for 6 months, we'd have a
It would
book,
be
or we'd
different.
have a this, or we'd be in a different possession. And that not doing, that going backwards, it's part of creating forwards momentum. And in order for a new thing to be created, sometimes the old thing has to fall apart.
Yeah.
And that old thing falling apart, it feels like going backwards, but that is momentum.
Well, I think that it creates space, right? Like when you break something, it creates space for the new thing, right?
Yeah.
Like I mean, I even even when I've like coached people and like tough management situations or employee, like work situations, I'm like, well, so break it, don't do it. Break the system. The guy's not, he's not helping you, so let it break, because
Yeah.
it'll just show everybody where it's breaking, and then everyone will fix it.
And
Which feels so, it feels so risky, right? Because especially for some of these young people, they're like, but the project needs to get done. And I said, yeah, but you don't have to do all of it.
And you know what this ties in really nicely with is your eye exam story, where sometimes getting the perfect score actually doesn't help you.
Sometimes it just means that you need a new pair of glasses.
Yeah. And so when we move out of,
and I think that you just helped crystallize where I was getting stuck on how to write about this.
Amazing. So we'll send you a bill when the podcast's over.
Okay.
And so
I'm sending my daughter up to be your summer intern, just so you know.
Great. Squamish is just an hour away. She'll have a great time. Where I'd like to end this is that when we move out of things being right and wrong, this, and to bring it back to me personally with my body. Oh, I ate chips today. I'm a horrible person. I ate vegetables today. I'm a great person. The chips are momentum. The vegetables are momentum, because I have a clear vision of what I'm creating with my body, and I'm never going to stop going in that direction. So all that exists is the arc of me getting from here to there. And when we make the conversation about trajectory, about momentum, we can stop putting so much pressure onto our decisions in the moment.
Yes, I agree with you. I think that it's that sense that everything counts, and really everything does not count. The things that matter count. And then the trick is figuring out what actually matters.
And therein lies the rub.
Yeah, that's why we do what we do, right?
That is
why. And I think that one of the quips that we got, that I've heard before, but I also that we were reminded of, is that slow is fast. Right? So maybe you being injured is the best thing that could have happened to you, because otherwise you were going to be hell bent to pick up that kettlebell again. For me, whether it's like the stroke or my cancer surgery last year, I was devastated. I had all these plans of launching everything, right? And then I got sick, and then the pandemic came. But if all of those things hadn't happened, I wouldn't be here with a lot. And I have far more clarity now than I did a year and a half ago. That's wondrous, right? And I told Matt that I would not use weird anymore. It's just wondrous.
It is wondrous. And we are just ticking away on the time, coming up on the hour. It has been, on that note, wondrous to have you join us.
This is really fun.
Yeah, it has been really
fun. One last thing. What support do you need in terms of getting your book? Is there people that you need to meet? Is there doors that need to be open?
Well, I think that, I think the thing that I want right now is to meet more, maybe meet more people like me. I think that, one of the things that I've always put a premium on is mentorship. And I feel like my generation can always do more to pull the people who are rising behind us up a little bit more easily and with less friction. So I want to find, I think representation matters. So I want to, if people know someone who I need to talk to, you know, an Asian woman who's broken the rules and blazed a trail or didn't follow the playbook, I want to talk to them.
I know someone.
Hey, yo.
Yeah.
So, okay, so if people know that person, how do they go?
I guess the best thing is just to email me. Trying to think of the best. Oh, they can email me at hello@resonant, RESONANT -strategies.com.
hello@resonantstrategies.com.
Yes, with the dash in between.
So we'll put that in the comments in the show notes. And yeah, as Curtis said, it's been magical, wonderous.
I have really enjoyed getting to
hanging out with you, and we wholly support everything that you're doing, the adventure that you're on, and we look forward to taking you on an adventure when the border opens.
Oh, we got the vaccine today, so
Fingers crossed.
Happy days.
And hopefully we have a president.
All right, well, we're going to wrap up the live, and thank you all for tuning in. And we hope that you enjoyed our conversation with Dorothy as much as we did.
Bye for now.